What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Good to see you again, and we've got two starter deck 10 leaders here, Luffy and Law, that I wanted to go over and some of their builds and why. I've actually been testing with a lot of different builds for Luffy, and I tried first the film build, which I thought did really well into yellow, and it kind of struggled into other matchups. I also don't think I had a lot of experience playing it, so I probably was making a lot of mistakes, so that's to be noted. But I started to test out the other Luffy build that didn't have the film package, but more had like some of the chopper blockers and some of this high end with some ramp in there. And I really liked this a lot. I ended up taking the chopper blockers out, but I think that they still could potentially have a place in the list. I just personally haven't figured out where I would like to fit them in here. But yeah, I'm just going to go over some of the numbers and some of the reasons behind certain cards. I think certain cards just kind of speak for themselves as to why they're in here, so I'm not going to touch on them very much. But for Otama, 2k counter, great reduction on power, can be used in tandem with Shanks, depending on the blocker that your opponent has. But Otama, all around, just great card. There's a reason why it's like $7 or $8 for this card. It's pretty solid. And then Basil Hawkins. At first, I wasn't the biggest fan of this card, and the more I played the deck, I realized that just having a very expendable 1k counter was pretty invaluable. And this was it. So if you're not playing this on turn 2 or getting it out of life, more times than not, I'm just using it as a very easy counter. Oh, they're attacking me for 6 or 7 while I'm buffed by Eustace Captain Kidd. 1k counter, call it a day. So I definitely wasn't the biggest fan, but I understand now why a lot of lists were having it in the deck, and I do run it at 4. Wire at 4, you don't really need to say much. This card is just a great card for the deck. Cheap blocker, 1k counter, being able to cycle because of a lot of the Dawn -1 effects. It's fantastic. I think that there's considerations for running Magellan in this list, maybe like 2 of Magellan because of Wire's effect and having some of that ability, but Eustace Captain Kidd usually just kind of gets the job done, so it's not too bad. 2k counter Sasaki, realistically you could trade this out for any 2k counter. I just personally have been trying it because of sometimes going on the odd curve and you mulligan into a hand that isn't all that great until the later stages of the game. This can help you get to that even curve and getting up in the Dawn cost and slowly but surely getting where you want to be. And I actually really think that this card can be pretty impactful on certain situations. If you're able to get it down on turn 2, if you're on odds, you now have 5 Dawn the following turn, and you might be able to play Miss All Sunday going up to 6. You use this card to go up to 7, and then the turn after you're going to be at 10 cost, or you're going to be at 10 Dawn, or potentially playing Kid at 9 and then going back up to 9. I mean, there's a lot of situations where you could use it, but I feel like more than not it's just a 2k counter, which is really nice. And we also have Khalifa. Khalifa's a 2k counter that is honestly not used too much, but it's actually quite nice in the mirror matchup, because the mirror matchup, they don't have a ton of removal. And if you have blockers on the field, this can actually just cycle you through a lot of cards. It can net you, up a lot of value. And then in other matchups that are not, the mirror, you can just attach 1 and swing for 5. I just like it in the mirror because I don't have to swing 6 into lead. I can just swing 4 and then do the Dawn minus effect just to cycle through some cards. I don't play it too often. It's mostly used as a 2k counter, but it does have its situations, so I do like it for that. And then 4 cost Law, I mean, there's not much to say other than cards great for purple. It helps you get back into having a similar hand size if you keep countering out and your opponent is taking life or only playing one card per turn. This card just can kind of really help you get back into the match. I have Miss All Sunday at 2. I like this as just like a turn 3 ramp. It can also be a really solid trigger that can potentially just win you the game, having that extra swing. And, you know, speaking of which, that's where I feel like Sasaki could be something like Shiki. Shiki with the trigger of Dawn -1, play the card. I think there is, you know, there are worlds where taking that last life and then realizing, I have enough swings to go for game or something like that the turn after, can be really invaluable. It's also a very easy 2K counter to pitch from hand. So that is, you know, that's why I say I like Sasaki, but it also has options of being changed out. Queen doesn't really need to be talked about too much. There's a reason why this card costs so much. It's because it's not really replaceable, at least at the moment. It's a phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal blocker. The on-play effect is insane. So the value that you generate from playing this card, especially in this deck, is fantastic. Can't really speak too highly of that enough. Yeah, 4 of for sure. And then 4 of the Eustace Captain Kidd. This is kind of like the engine of the deck. Getting this card on board allows you to become a 7K leader every single turn. You have multiple of these. You're going up to 8K, potentially 9. The Dawn -1 effect actually plays to your advantage because when you subtract 1, you can add it back with leader at the end of turn to have 1 active for like a Radical Beam or a Guard Point, a Blast Breath, all kinds of stuff. This is definitely like the creme de la creme of the deck. Having 2 Shanks as well is just for a larger body and having a lot of power in the rush aspect of this. It does get through some of the lower cost blockers. So Shanks is just a card that you can easily get to, you know, using some of these ramping cards in the deck. And then once you get there, it's just a powerful body on board that is very difficult for them to remove. And even if they do remove it, I mean, they have to prioritize removing Shanks or Kid, which one's going to be the bigger threat. It becomes a pretty big thorn in your opponent's side. The 1 of Newgate, I mean, if we could run 4, this deck would be cracked. I mean, it's still pretty good, but having the 1 of for sure, because it just brings your leader up to 8. And usually speaking, you have a Eustace Captain Kidd on board by then, so now you're a 9K leader for a whole turn. Good luck, you know, to your opponent to try and take a life from you that turn. So yeah, this card is wonderful again. And then just being able to use Otama to lower some of those 5K blockers and get them within range of Edward Newgate, just being able to KO it, phenomenal. Yeah. The Luffy I run 3 of because in the mirror matchup you want to be the first person to see this card. If you don't, it's tough. If you are the first person to get this on the board, it can be really helpful. The beauty of it is that it doesn't have to be Luffy attacking, that when your opponent activates a blocker you get to KO something. It could be anything. So you play this card down and use Eustace Captain Kidd to swing Dawn -1, add it back with leader ability. You now have defense in the form of 1 Dawn active and your leader's at 7K. And you have an 11,000 power rush as well. So you're hitting for 8, 7, and 11. And you also have some defense on the following turn. This card is very sticky. It's difficult to deal with. It's hard to play around as well because it forces your opponent to either counter out or to just let whatever is being attacked be KO'd, or potentially just taking a life, like, no doubt. So very powerful card. I have it at 3. I've seen some lists with it at 2. I've seen some with it at 4. I think 3 is a sweet spot. It does feel bad sometimes though because you won't see it, but usually speaking, with how much cycle and card draw the list has, you end up seeing it. But 2 Gum Gum Jet Gattlings, I was playing around with this number as well, whether I had it at 3 or 4, but 2 felt like the right spot. The trigger does, you know, allow you to ramp 1, which is really nice. And then just being able to discard, you know, some dead card in hand for plus 3K. Like, you might have a Miss All Sunday and you're like, I'm not going to get this down anytime soon. we can just go ahead and pitch that and go up by 3,000. Love to see it. The one of Rad Beam, just solid, you know, 1 cost plus 4k. And that's the idea with the Blast Breath as well. The Blast Breath is being able to Dawn -1 and then going up plus 4k. Initially, I was actually running the Ulti Mortar instead of this, but it was kind of inconvenient to go -2 on certain turns, I found. I don't hate the card. I like it. It's just there were times where I was like, man, I really wish I just had like a guard point or a Blast Breath right now, or something like that, because doing the Dawn -2 was, you know, on top of me having already used Eustace Captain Kidd to Dawn minus and other effects like having played Queen. It's like, oh man, I'm like really kind of struggling with that card. So this Dawn -1 and then the plus 4k was the substitution, and I really like it. It's very good. I wish I had the trigger, but we live. And then it says All-Star Calamities on here, but I believe the card is called I think it's called Lead Performer Disaster. But draw 1, add 1 card as active. This is your ramp. Like if you want to go second with this list and get this card, you get to draw a card replacing it, and you get to ramp 1. If you get it in trigger, it's amazing. It's a fantastic card. It's very easily pitched at the end of the game when it comes to having Queen on board, Khalifa potentially cycling, Wire cycling, Gum Gum Jet Gatling to get a plus 3k. There's just a large amount of ways that you can get it out of your hand if you don't see it in those first couple of turns. But with this list in mind, there's obviously different packages that people run, and these are some considerations. There's obviously more that, you know, people have run, but there's the film package with Buena Festa, and I personally haven't found the way to make it work for me just yet. But I do think that there's definitely some really good thoughts there. I just haven't figured it out personally, but. And then I actually played against a homie of mine last night that was running a Whitebeard list, which was really interesting. I actually really liked it. Was Ezo and having a 4-cost Marco in there, having the 5-cost Marco, using Fosa as blockers, Jozu for the 2k counters. Yeah, there was a lot of really, you know, well thought out ideas with the Whitebeard package, so that's just an idea as well. Gordon, this could be used in conjunction with Buena Festa for the 2k counter film package, but I don't even think you need to run film in order to just run this card. It's a good cycle if you want to play it. I would just use it mostly as a 2k counter, but occasionally it's just one of those cards that you're like, hey, I need a body on board, but also simultaneously I can just cycle a card out of hand. And there's also Sanji. It's a 2k counter. I don't know. It's kind of tough, in my opinion, to take that life for free when you're at 3 life. Well, the first life is pretty easy to take for free, but using this card to get an early 7k pressure, it can be useful. But yeah, I've seen some people use it. I like it, but it's, I don't know. I just think there's particularly more useful 2Ks right now. And just not having Nami does kind of hurt the potential of having this on those early plays. But Jean Bart, also another card that I've seen used. My argument here is that you really just kind of decide whether you want trigger, or excuse me, the trigger and the draw power of Miss All Sunday, or you want the 1k power of Jean Bart. I think they're both more or less doing what you want them to do. This obviously giving you a Dawn active versus Miss All Sunday giving you a Dawn rested, but you do get the card draw power. I just like the trigger of being able to potentially get that card at the end of the game, and it could very well be like the card I need to go for a swing that wins the match. So Jean Bart, it's super interchangeable with a lot of the cards in the deck. Uta, run with the film package, but also doesn't need to be. It's just a awesome ability for this list. realistically. It's great. Your leader and all of your characters gain plus 1,000. You use that in conjunction with 7 cost kid. You know, just being able to get your leader up more and more so that it's even harder for them to swing into. I like Uta. Uta's it's an option. You know what I mean? Kaido, I prefer Shanks personally. Yeah, just going Dawn -5, especially when you have like Kid on board, so it's Dawn -6, and then you can't use leader ability for like 2 turns after that. It's I don't hate it. I just can't. The only thing I would do is if I wanted to run 1 Shanks and then run 1 Kaido, that would be fine. But you know, you could always just play it. You don't have to use the on-play effect, but I feel like the on-play effect is really what makes the card. Just the KO of 6 and the rush. Yeah, I personally just choose not to run it. I think that the card is definitely fine, though. You could run that instead of Shanks. You could run it, and you know, as a 1 of, as a 2 of. But yeah, that's also an option. The Ulti Mortar, which I was talking about earlier, I think it's a great card. I think I was maybe putting myself in situations with my Dawn that it was difficult to get a like that value of going -2 and then plus 2k power. The draw 1 card though is really what makes this shine. I just couldn't figure it out. I was working on it, but maybe it's a card to come back to, but that's just for me. And Guard Point. Yeah, you could use Guard Point. I like Blast Breath now, but I think either one of them would be fine. I've liked testing out Blast Breath. It feels really nice. A lot of the times they'll be thinking of the only 1 of Radical Beam, and then you have the Blast Breath to kind of catch them off guard. So it's a solid card. And yeah, that's basically it for the Luffy list. But as far as Law, I think what I go for in this list is ultra aggro. Ultra aggro. It's like swing 5 or 6 every single attack, every single turn. Constantly play down cards. I've seen a bunch of different lists, and this is the one that I've tested out in the sim, and I like it. But it's, you know, I can't say that I've played Law a lot. So I wouldn't say that I have like a great understanding of the deck. I would just say that as far as the staples, these cards do seem to be in here. I think Ein is particularly one card that is maybe not a staple, but I like it. I like it, just being able to ramp a Dawn back. But yeah, 4 Otama, 4 Gordon. The Gordons are super pricey, I know, but they make this list right now. And 4 of the Jinbei. I have seen that a lot of people don't run the Jinbei, or they do. I think it's probably a card that's, you know, interchangeable with a lot of 2K counters. I think that one in particular that I've seen in a couple of other lists is Ulti, and using that they run page 1 instead of Ein. So it would be like Ulti and page 1 and no Ein and no Jinbei. Right, and I don't hate that at all. I mean, that's a great way to fill up your board extremely fast. Pretty terrifying, honestly, all things considered. But Heat as well, because of how many times you use your leader ability to Dawn minus. This card is just going to get a lot of value, and it's going to be a 6k every single turn for the rest of the game. So 3 cost, 6k power body, just swinging. It's annoying to deal with. You don't even have to dedicate Dawn to it, but you can if you want to get a 7k swing through. Yeah, Heat, excuse me, is fantastic in this list. I think I might actually just bump this to 4, if I'm being honest, because it does feel really good, and maybe bring Ein down to 2. But I'm just testing. Zoro is, like I said, I'm going for like really big aggression in this list. So the 3 of Zoro, just being able to play this off leader ability after removing either a blocker or some pesky card, and then just going for another 5k swing, it's solid. It just, being able to get that extra swing in, be aggressive, is massive. Brook just works with everything in this list. Just being able to get it within range of the 5ks to attack it, or for you to use leader ability on the targeted character. I mean, this is the card. I love this card. And I've loved this card since OPO1, but this card is fantastic in this list right here. Yet again, with kind of the off, you know, like the random promos, is we have Trafalgar Law here on play -2k. It works great with leader ability. It works great with so many different things. I mean, it's a fantastic card. There's also the argument that you could run like a film 2k searcher in here. So maybe instead of like Jinbei, I could run Buena Festa. But the list would change a little bit. But you do have quite a bit of film cards in here at the moment. So there is 14 film cards in the moment. But you, yet again, could change up the list a little bit to where you could have that film package. There's so many different things that you could do with this, which is why I think a lot of these red-purple lists are really fun. And then Ein, just being able to add a Dawn and rest it. I like it because it's one of those cards that if I don't have Shachi and Penguin, or if I don't have Beppo, it is some form of ramp, you know, through leader ability. And it's a 5k stat line, so can't really complain. It's one of the easier cards to put onto the board, you know, since you aren't losing counter power. You can just play that down, and it feels pretty good. But I do run 2 of Uta. It just feels like sometimes there's situations where this effect can be detrimental to your opponent. But yet again, you're not really going for board as much with this because your leader ability is doing that for you, and you're really going to attack face. But Uta is like, okay, I've got everything kind of turned sideways, and maybe they have a card, a character or two on board, you know, that we haven't been able to remove because they've been able to go wide. This does kind of stop that aggression a little bit, and being able to clear what you have, because more than not, you don't have a lot of cards in hand playing red-purple Law. It's usually speaking pretty grim on the hand size, because you're playing a lot of cards, you're using cards to subtract power, to use leader ability, to play card. It's a lot. So Uta's had its situations where 2 feel pretty good. Shachi and Penguin, just playing it off leader ability, getting the 2 rested Dawn back. You're only going down 1. Feels great. It's also a 2k counter, so super valuable. Definitely one of the best cards for this deck, hands down. Law here is just always like, you're going to be at a lower hand size than your opponent 9 times out of 10. So using this card to try and bridge that gap between you and your opponent can be really nice. And then Beppo, being able to on play and when attack, get that Dawn back. This card in conjunction, you know, with Ein and Shachi and stuff like that, really doesn't net you a negative on your Dawn for that turn. It usually is like a stale. You'll just be at, you'll subtract 3 and then bring 3 back. It's wonderful. So Beppo's arguably one of the most important cards to get down on the board, and then trying to keep it there is pretty important. Queen, just like Luffy, can't really say anything bad about this card. It's just great being able to cycle through. Also, you get a 6k body on board. Can't use leader ability, obviously, but this is what gets you the cards that you might need. So Queen is a must-have in a lot of these purple decks. And then I choose to run the 1 of Radical Beam and 2 of Round Table. I've seen some decks run 3 of this. I've seen some run 1. I've seen one deck in particular run 4, which was crazy. But yeah, I like 2. I like 2. It's just sometimes your opponent will be able to get down one of those really, you know, big 10k, 12k body cards, and this is that removal that you need. Yeah, Round Table is super clutch in a lot of situations. And then some cards to think about potentially are the ulti and page 1 combo. Just ulti coming down for 4 and then being able to Dawn -1, play a page 1. You could get probably 3 4-cost cards down on the same turn for 4 Dawn. It's pretty insane. It's pretty insane. So This can be like a huge momentum swing just on like turn 2, but you are going to be low on hand size. But it does allow you to have a very, very substantial board. Yeah. And then, you know, just 4-stat vanillas, Zoro, Ace is a thought for being able to subtract 3k to 2 characters, and Hydra, the 1-cost event, Daw -1, subtract 3k power. I think, yeah, there's a lot of different ideas here, but all in all, I think Red Purple Law and Red Purple Luffy are definitely here to stay. They're only going to get better in OP05, so I think this 4.5 deck list is really fun, and if you want to try either of them out, let me know what you think. And other than that, I hope you guys have a great day. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.